Call the Service Committee meeting to order. Members present tonight are Roletta, Blake, Bob, Rath, Cross. Our first piece of legislation is resolution number 1495, authorizing the Director of Public Service to execute a contract for reimbursement of legal representation of indigent persons for calendar year 2015 with the Licking County Board of Commissioners for the City of Newark, Licking County, Ohio. Director Sassen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is our standard annual piece of legislation that allows the city to be reimbursed by the county for the payment of attorney fees for indigent defendants in the municipal court. It used to be we had one that was an ongoing contract. The state now requires that we renew it every year, and we're here today for our renewal.
Motion. Second. Motion by Mr. Cross. Second by Mr. Rath. Are there any questions from the committee? Any questions from the audience? All in favor to move this on to full council, say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Move on. Thank you. The second resolution is number 1496, resolution affirming the base rate for the stormwater utilities service charge as authorized by the codified ordinance of the City of Newark, Ohio. Mr. Reynolds?
Yeah, back in 2006, we established a resolution to set the rates for the stormwater utility. Part of that resolution was that when we got to the, if you recall, we set a stepped phase-in of the rates. And part of that resolution was that we would come back and do an assessment of those rates. And so we have a stormwater group that meets once a month. And so we did the assessment of that to see whether the rate is appropriate, where we think we're reflecting the proper amount of money, and whether we need to raise that rate. So this is administrative action. We're just saying that we did that assessment. We do not need to raise the rate, and this is simply a resolution to keep the rate at where it is currently at $6.50. I will say we're spending about 80% of that money on maintenance and debt and capital projects in that utility, which is part of what we did when we looked at the assessment of that, and that's where we said we would be when we established the utility. So.
Motion. Mr. Bob. Second. Are there any questions? Anybody on the committee?
Mr. Chairman.
Right.
Mr. Loomis, can you talk, there's section 2 of the resolution talks about credit adjustments for non-residential owners of property.
Yeah, part of the program is that the non-residential customers who get, all residential customers get billed one DRU. Anybody that's non-residential, so commercial and industrial, pay more than that. But they have the opportunity to get a credit for things that they do. They can adopt storm drains, they can do water retention systems, some engineering things that they can do, and we then give them up to 50% credit on their bill to perform these actions as part of our program. So, and that's just included in there because that was in the original ordinance. So just included in there. Resolution.
Any other questions from the committee? Any questions from the audience? All in favor of moving this on to council, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Moved on 5-0. Thank you, Mr. Rose. The next resolution is 14-97, the resolution authorizing and directing the Director of Public Service of the City of Newark, Ohio to execute and file an application with the Muskingum Watershed Conservancy District and to provide all information and documentation required to become eligible for possible funding assistance.
This is a project we're working on. This is part of the log pond diversion ditch. We have some erosion on the bank just south of Granville Road. We started working on the engineering of this project. We found that we found a grant program through the Muskingum Water Conservancy District. I think most of you know each of us pay a $1 per month fee to them. They have, we are going to apply to them to pay for this. They'll pay 80% of it. They'll reimburse us 80% of this project. The project's about $250,000, plus about $48,000 in engineering fees, so about $300,000. We expecting to get about $250,000 back out of them as a grant for this project as part of a storm control system. So we just need authorization for the service director to enter into that agreement, and then we will pay the money out and they will reimburse us for this project. So pretty good deal for us.
Do a motion?
Thank you.
Motion, Mr. Graff. Second, Mr. Bud. Are there any questions from the committee? Any questions from the audience? All in favor of moving this on to full council, signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Moves on 5-0. Thank you, Mr. Loomis. Resolution number 14-98, a resolution adopting an updated county-wide all-natural hazard mitigation plan for Licking County, Ohio. Mr. Moore.
This is a plan that was originally developed by the Licking County planning staff back in 2009, and this is an update of the plan. Most of the text and the changes of the plan were updated at the end of 2012 and into 2013, and so that's the vintage of the text. It went to FEMA for approval. It's been at FEMA for about a year, I think, and it's back to us. The part of adopting the plan is that all the communities involved with it will hopefully pass a resolution, and the plan will be in effect at that point. So if there's any questions, I'll be glad to answer them. It's a rather lengthy document. I talked to Jeremy earlier today about it. It's about 200 pages. I gave you the website over at the county that has that document on there. Basically, it's a document that talks about how each community and how the county overall handles the natural disasters that happen in the county: flooding, storms, tornadoes, any of those sort of things.
Big motion.
Motion by Mr. Bud. Second. Second by Mr. Brown.
Mr. Chairman?
Right.
Mr. Moorhead, you did mention that it is about 200 pages, but I tend to read these things, so I did read it. And on page 84 of the document, they had you in there as a quote, and this is specific to the floodplain section of the document. It said that page 84, that beyond normal levee and drainage maintenance, no new projects have occurred or are planned in the foreseeable future. The city is being reactive to floodplains and those floodings. However, I'm aware of a project from our stormwater utility coordinator that there is some discussions with fixing the levees. So I was hoping you might be able to clarify that for the committee, for the public.
Yes, sir. After this document was sort of written or revised, and like I said, in late 2012, we initiated a project to study what it would take to the levee down along the South Fork of the Licking River does not provide what's known as 100-year floodplain protection. So a lot of the south end of town, from the river northward up to, say, about the railroad tracks, are in flood zones or floodplain. And if the levee were higher, we would be able to have the levee recertified, and it would provide greater flood protection and allow the floodplain to be reduced in that area. So we initiated a project back in 2013 to start studying that. We've done the survey work, and we're looking at the design work for that now. Appears that most of the levee, instead of, our initial impression was the levee would have to be raised on the order of 2 to 3 feet, but we actually think it's more in the 1.5 foot to 6 inches, from 6 inches to 1.5 foot. And it is only in It's not all the way across, it's more in certain areas. So we're going to look at that and put some cost numbers to that before we move forward with it, but it would be a very beneficial project for the south end of town.
I just want to reiterate that, as far as we're developing for businesses and then also projects like Habitat for Humanity would be able to work in those areas, because right now Habitat for Humanity won't go in that neighborhood because it's in a floodplain, but if we work to get that levy higher, then that would solve that issue as well.
Yep.
So thank you very much.
One thing, you talked about getting all the different communities to sign on and to get on top of this.
Yeah.
Do you see that being a long, involved process, or is that something to be fairly quick, or what would be your?
No, I think the deadline is February of next year. So in the next few months, I anticipate all the other communities will be signing on, if they haven't already.
Any other questions?
Yeah, the south side levy extension, what kind of, and I know you can't put a specific dollar figure to it, but can you give us a ballpark idea? Can you give us a ballpark idea and time frame?
I don't know what the dollar figure is. I think it's probably, I don't know. I'm not even going to venture a guess right now. We're hoping it's in the single millions range. And of course, depending on what the cost is, will depend on the timing of it. Will dictate the timing of it, I guess.
Any other questions from the committee? Any questions from the audience? All those in favor of moving this on to full council, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Thank you.
Thank you.
Resolution 14-99, preliminary legislation, State Route 16 off-ramp at Church Street exit. Mr. Moore.
Sir, this is preliminary legislation through ODOT. Basically, we're just starting the planning process, but we've have $400,000 programmed in state fiscal year 2017 to be able to make some changes to the State Route 16 off-ramp there at West Church Street. If you get off there now, you realize it's just one lane. We would like to widen that out to 2 lanes so that you can have a left turn and a right turn there. And we think that we can do that relatively easily. And so this is the first step in cooperating with ODOT.
Any questions from the committee? Mr. Rath?
Is that in the future, hopefully more near the distant, when we have a new Cherry Valley interchange, will that affect this project at all? Or are we taking that into consideration with this project?
Yeah, we've thought about that. We don't think that this would have any adverse effect. It actually would help the situation out there. So.
Any other questions from the committee? Any questions from the audience? Need a motion? I'll make a motion.
Second.
Mr. Buck, second by Mr. Rath. All those in favor of moving this on the full council, signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Thank you. That moves on. Thank you. Resolution number 14-101, consent legislation, Unit Vista Street Bridge.
Yes, sir. This is sort of the final piece of legislation from ODOT for the project to replace the bridge on Buena Vista Street over Cemetery Run. ODOT is providing 100% of the funding for that through a new program that was announced last year through the governor's office, and so we will thank them very much for that, and look forward to the construction beginning in 2015. If it does.
Motion by Mr. Bud.
Second.
Second by Mr. Rath. Any questions from the committee? How long of a project do you see that being?
The construction, I would guess it's probably a 3 to 4 month project.
Any questions from the audience? All in favor of moving this on to full council, signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Thank you, Mr. Moorhead. Resolution number 14-102, authorizing and directing the Director of Public Service to advertise for bids and enter into contract subject to the appropriation of funds for the demolition of 110 through 114 Union Street and declaring an emergency.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Department of Development and Property Maintenance are looking at the possibility of doing a demolition on this building. Are you all familiar with 110, 114 Union? It's about a 3-story high commercial building right across from Flying Colors Preschool and Goodwill location. It's got demolition orders on it from Property Maintenance. The building is obviously badly deteriorated. It's been sitting vacant for a number of years now. The Department of Development has some federal grant dollars that we can use for this. We don't know if we have enough, but because it is federal grant dollars, we need to do the public advertisement, so hence this resolution. And because it is in a state of deterioration, and because the timing of the grant funds are kind of coming to a close, we really need to use this as an emergency clause for the legislation so we can get immediate effect upon vote of council at the next council meeting. Thank you much.
Motion by Mr. Bud, second by Mr. Brown. Any questions from the committee? Any questions from the audience? All in favor of moving this on to full council, signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And that concludes Service Committee.
Okay, we'll go ahead and call the Finance Committee to order. Members present are Mrs. Floyd, Mr. Marmee, Mr. Bubb, Mr. Cost, and myself. We do have 4 pieces of legislation on our agenda tonight. And the first piece is to consider resolution number 14-100, appropriating monies for the current expenses of the municipal corporation. This first section is dealing with salaries, wages, and insurance out of the probation grant fund. And Mr. Sadie.
Good evening. This is in regards to the probation improvement grant. It's for the remainder of this year, and it's to pay the salaries and health insurance for 3 employees, the 3 employees which are put under that grant.
Thank you, sir.
Motion.
Second.
Motion, Mr. Bubb. Second, Mrs. Floyd. Any questions from the committee? Questions from the audience? Seeing none, all those in favor of moving this on to full council, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you, sir. The next section is the appropriation of the unappropriated balance from the 954 Law Library Fund in the amount of $3,997.42. We got our clerk, Marcia Phelps, is here to speak about this.
It is what it says it is. We over-collected from what we estimated we would collect, and in order for it to be paid out to the county, it has to be appropriated. And you want to know about the law library?
Yes, if you yes.
It was established, I believe, in 1986. Somebody maybe would be better at that than me, but the fund was established to pay for a law library, which is located in every county in the state of Ohio. Of course, we have one as well. And out of the funds that we collect, we disperse funds to the city, which in turn disperses it to the county, which is supposed to offset the cost of operation.
Thank you very much.
Make a motion.
Motion, Mrs. Floyd. Second, Mr. Cost. Do a lot of people utilize the law library?
I wouldn't know. They used to have a full-time employee, but since I'm not a commissioner, I don't pay attention to it anymore.
Oh, Chairman, for what it's worth, to get a little return from your investment that we're required to make anyhow, I believe the court does it. In my office, we use our online research. Most of our research is online now. We've cut our book subscription account dramatically, and we're able to get a reduced rate for that online research program by partnering with the county law library. So we save a significant amount of money by using that law library. So there is some, value to it, even beyond just the fact that it's there.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Sassen. That was one of my questions for when we get into later legislation, but thank you for answering that now, and hopefully I won't keep you for the rest of the night. So,
That's okay.
we have a motion and a second. Is there any further questions from the committee? Questions from the audience? All those in favor of moving this on to full council, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Section 3 is the disappropriation of the appropriated balance of the street traffic fund in the amount of $43,899. Director Rhodes.
The reason for the disappropriation is an under collection of revenue.
Any questions for Director Rhodes?
Make a motion.
Motion by Mr. Bug. Second, Mrs. Floyd. Questions from the committee? Questions from the audience? Mr. Guthrie.
Mr. Chairman, David, can you sort of explain that, the under collection? What's that result from?
Projections on what we're going to collect. And
Okay, so we projected one thing and it came in below that.
yeah, it's a bookkeeping. Really, it's a bookkeeping thing.
Thank you.
Any further comments? All those in favor of moving this on to full council, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0.
Thanks.
Thank you, Director Rhodes. Section 4 is the disappropriation of appropriated balance of the Community Development Fund in the amount of $579,323. Director Martyr.
Need to get caught on my paper.
It's rare that I've been told I move fast, so.
Yes, this is similar to what Mr. Rhodes had. We had a under collection of funds, and it was due to basically we had some purchase order carryovers. We had some incomplete projects or delayed projects that weren't completed. Part of it's because we received our release of funds from the HUD grant so late in the year. Those are the primary reasons for this disappropriation.
Thank you, Director Motter. Is there questions or a motion on this?
Make a motion.
Motion, Mr. Bug.
Second.
Second, Mrs. Floyd. Any questions from the committee? Questions from the audience? All those in favor of moving this on to full council, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Motter. Section 5 is the disappropriation of the appropriated balance of the Fire Damage Fund and the amount of $39,373.67. Director Spurgeon.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. This is similar to Directors Modern Roads, is a bookkeeping entry. Fire damage funds is a portion of insurance that we collect to make sure a property post-fire is brought back to snuff. We've had two things affecting that under collection, less fires, and I know we've had one down the south end in your jurisdiction that they had no insurance.
Thank you, Director Spurgeon. Any motion, Mr. Bug?
Second.
Second, Mrs. Floyd. I just want to make sure the committee understands this whole piece of legislation, with it being the end of the year wrap up, this is going to be it's expedited. We'll wait the 2-day reading room, so just make sure everybody understands that. It's on your paperwork, but just wanted to say that. Any questions from the committee? Questions from the audience? All those in favor of moving this on to full council, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Or all opposed? Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you,
Chair.
Director Spurgeon. See, Section 6 is the disappropriation of appropriated balance of the general fund in
in the amount of $512,900. Let's see, anyone want to speak to this? Mr. Auditor? Thank you, Mr. Johnson.
Sure. This is just getting appropriations off the books that we're not going to be doing. That's why everybody's here tonight, just appropriating. We are cited, we being the city are cited, if we appropriate things that we're not going to be able to fund. So these are just appropriations that were made, they shouldn't be on the books, and it's taken them off. This part of the year doesn't impact anything other than our books.
Thank you, sir.
Sure.
Motion, Mr. Bug. Second, Mr. Collins. Any further questions or comments from the committee? Mr. Guthrie.
I am not real clear on what these are. Some of these salaries here, police and fire.
Those are, but it's unneeded funds at this point. So it needs to come off the books.
So it's money that we appropriate for police and fire salaries that was not used, therefore it has to come off the books.
Exactly.
And you're really not the one to answer why we wouldn't have used these funds?
No, I'm just cleaning it up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Martin.
Thank you. Is there any reason with these funds that we did not resupply the budget stabilization fund? And I don't know if you can answer that, or who made the decision not to do that?
Like I said, I'm just getting it off the books.
Okay. Can anybody answer that?
Yeah, I could answer. I mean, it was used in the carryover, basically, unused funds. We estimated, we got an estimate from the county auditor of $2.4 million in property tax collection, net about $2.1 million. So there's $300,000 less dollars. We have to use what they give us as a number to approximate. So if we had put it in budget stabilization, we'd have to turn around and take it back out to balance the budget. So it's kind of one big pot at the end of the day, and we use it that way to help balance the budget for the succeeding year.
Any further Mr. Guthrie?
Mayor, question?
Yes.
Mayor Hall, can I ask you a question?
Sure. Mayor, you want to come forward?
For instance, these salaries in police and fire,
Yes.
are these examples of like someone retired and they weren't replaced within a period of time?
Correct.
Or decision was made not to fill a position?
Correct. No, it was, with about 370 employees across the city, you have dynamics there. We have many employees have been with us many years, so we have retirements. I mean, from a few to several within a year, unanticipated many times. So obviously the day they retire, the following business day is not, someone's not necessarily working in those, in that position. So there is savings each of those days. I think everybody needs to understand salaries within this city with benefits, et cetera, adds up to quite a bit per employee when you're including health insurance. So an employee at the end of the day may cost us $80,000, $90,000 a year in police and fire. So those can add up kind of quick. The number looks big, but it's not as many heads as we're thinking. So.
Any further questions from the committee? Questions from the audience? There is a motion and a second. All those in favor of moving this on to full council, signify by saying aye. 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 Opposed, same sign.
Aye.
4-1. Motion carries. Let's see. We're on number 7. This is a disappropriation of the appropriated balance of the police and fire pension fund in the amount of $637.02. Mr. Johnson.
We received funding from the county through millage for the accrued liability of the police and fire pension fund. And the accrued liability is, when the fund initially started, it was grossly underfunded. So every city in Ohio who has a police department has a share of making up that deficit. We received this through real estate tax collections. Again, it's something that's estimated. In this case, not as much came in. These fees are collection fees that the county charges us. This is no real appropriation other than the book entry because we post the net amount we receive from the county, but we used to do it that way. Now what we do is we post the gross amount that's entitled to us, less the fees, and then the actual cash is what we receive from the county. So this is just one of those bookkeeping things that we have to go through. Doesn't mean anything, but it needs to come off.
Thank you, sir. Entertained motion by Mrs. Floyd.
Second.
Second, Mr. Bug. Any questions or comments from the committee? Questions, comments from the audience? All those in favor of moving this on to full council, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. The next section is the disappropriation of appropriated balance of the Water Projects Fund in an amount of $2 million. Mr. Loomis.
Yeah. This is a similar kind of thing we are required when we do budgeting, that we're anticipating some money coming in next year. We have to account for that, and this is money for the we were planning on getting a loan in December for the downtown project, and so this was the $2 million for that project that we had projected this time last year. Obviously, those numbers have changed, but we're not going to get that loan until January, so we're just and these are memo appropriations. We never actually see this money. This is loan money. We don't actually get this money in. It goes directly to the contractors.
Thank you, sir. Motion, Mr. Butler. Second, Mrs. Floyd. Any questions from the committee? Questions from the audience? All those in favor, move this on to full council, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. And the next section, 9, is the disappropriation of appropriated balance of the Sewer Projects Fund in an amount of $11,650,000. Mr. Loomis.
Same thing, same project. This was anticipation of a loan coming in December. It's not going to come until January, and so we're just appropriating it. And again, this is not money that would come to the city. This is loan money that goes to a contractor that we're memo appropriating because it does show up as an expense as a loan at the end, as a liability at the end. So.
Thank you, Mr. Loomis. Motion, Mrs. Floyd.
Second.
Second, Mr. Bug. Questions, comments from the committee? Questions, comments from the audience? All those in favor, move this on full council, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you, Mr. Loomis. Section 10 and our 11 are dealing with a similar topic. Director Sassen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Section 10 and Section 11 is a appropriation from the Budget Stabilization Fund into the General Fund. I believe it's actually going into an account in my office for disbursement. It's the city's share of an agreed settlement that's agreed contingent upon council's approval and appropriation of these funds for the settlement of a pending federal litigation. I would recommend that council approve the appropriation, that they allow the settlement to go forward. A little uncomfortable asking or answering too many questions other than a generic, do I think it's a good idea question, outside of executive session. So if you have specific questions about the settlement, about the case, about where that came from or goes to, I would strongly suggest we do that in executive session.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion we go into executive session.
Mrs. Floyd makes a motion to go into executive session. Is there a second? There's a second by Mr. Coss.
If I could augment that motion, just for the record, that motion, I assume Ms. Floyd would be for the purpose of discussing this pending litigation, and it would be to include all members of council and the administration, the law director, and the auditor in that session.
What, not you, Joe? Yes, please, thank you.
There is a motion and a second to go into executive session. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Is there a motion to come out of executive session? Mrs. Floyd. Second by Mr. Bug. All those in favor to come out of the executive session back in the full session, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. 5-0. So we are back in the full session, and the question is on section 10, the appropriation of the unappropriated balance of the budget stabilization fund in the amount of $20,000. Is there a motion for that? Motion, Mrs. Floyd. Second, Mr. Cost. Questions, comments from the committee? Seeing none, all those in favor of moving it on to full council signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. 5-0.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. And thank you, Mr. Sass, I'm sorry. And section 11 is the appropriation of the unappropriated balance of the general fund in the amount of $20,000. Entertain a motion for that. Motion, Mrs. Floyd. Second, Mr. Cost. Questions, comments? All those in favor of moving this on to full council signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Okay. That concludes our first piece of legislation tonight. The way I see this is to allow them to come forward and to answer any questions that the committee might have regarding the budgets related to the court system, and then we'll let them go on with their evening after the committee answers or asks any questions of them. Did Judge Stansberry leave? Oh, Judge Higgins, you want to come up?
Judge thought that the session would be over quicker. He had a wife to pick up at the airport and wisely made the correct choice. But I'm here to try to answer any questions. He asked me to sub for him on his way out. I'd be happy to entertain any questions about our budget. And of course, Kevin can probably answer the questions concerning probation a lot better than I can, although I'll be happy to address any of those questions that you might have as well.
Thank you, Judge Higgins. I guess I wanted to ask. I know that your funding we're sort of an instrument for that, so I appreciate your attendance here tonight and everyone else's attendance for coming to talk to us tonight about this. Something I was always curious about is how many employees are in the municipal court is funded through this?
Well, I guess it depends how you define the municipal court. Marcia Phelps has a large number of employees that are not answerable to the judges. She is a separately elected public official, so she can address that issue. Currently, we have 13 people working for us in the probation department. That includes 11 full-time staff people, probation officers and secretarial staff. It also includes one contract hire, Mr. Harrington, who does the community service aspect of probation. And then we have a part-time position that helps the two secretaries. And then the court, if you want me to pursue that, Judge Stansberry and I each have 3 employees, a bailiff, court recorder, and an assignment commissioner. And then we share Rose Peck, who's the court administrator, prepares our budget for us. And we also share Deb Kranig, who's the she's the small claims hearing officer, administrator. She does arbitrations. And then we have a part-time lawyer who hears all of the eviction cases in Licking County and also hears all of the small claims cases in Licking County. Entry level, those cases can be appealed to the 2 judges of the court. Some are and some aren't. So those are the employees that are responsible to the administrative judge. Currently, Judge Stansberry is the administrative judge. I'll be taking that back 1 January.
We had the committee had earlier received a letter from Judge Stansberry talking about psychological evaluations and the need for more funds. Does the budget presented to us tonight, does that include the necessary funds that you see?
Well, Mr. Chairman, at best it's an estimate. There are so many things that we have absolutely no control over. Someone comes in and pleads, suggests their client is not competent to stand trial. We have no choice. Someone comes in and pleads NGRI, not guilty by reason of insanity. We have no choice. We have to send these folks off to be evaluated. Netcare does our evaluations for us. I think they charge currently, $1,000 a pop, Bruce? And for some reason or other, we had a lot of those last year. We may not have any this year. Probably we will. But it's something that's beyond our control. It's like the weather.
Is that the funds for psychological, does that come out of the judicial or does that come out of probation?
It comes out of judicial, it doesn't come out of probation.
Okay. I want to thank you very much. Did anyone have any questions for the judge? Mr. Marmon?
I don't know if it's for just judicial or should it be also for the courts?
She is here.
Just a couple questions. One, I saw that the insurance went down significantly as far as a little over 10%, but yet waived insurance remained the same, and didn't know what would have caused the significant decrease, but yet no change in waived insurance, or is it just a selection of family versus individual, or what?
Mr. Chairman? We, on Friday, detected that problem in the budget, and so we sent an email to Lori, and we met with her today, and she's going to research it because it's $25,412, I believe, and we certainly don't want to come to council with a budget that might not be correct, but at best, we'll leave it what it is until she can do her evaluation and advise us. She did send us some information late this afternoon, but we haven't had time to totally analyze that for employee.
Okay.
But thanks for noticing, because we did too, and we certainly was concerned as well. But we did narrow it down to being in the health insurance line item.
Okay.
I might add a few points to that, just FYI. Your larger departments, you'll see more fluctuation in that. If you think of a single's about $6,000, a family's about $18,000, so you can have a $12,000 swing on one employee without affecting the wage insurance. So if the larger departments, that'll be a bigger swing, could be just changing. You have more odds of changing by numbers about the health insurance.
I had, I guess I just had a few questions for Mr. Sadie in the probation department, if that's okay. I noticed that for your budget for the adult probation, it's last year when council adopted the budget, it was $664,132. And then this request for 2015 is $577,283. I was just wondering if you could speak to that difference, to what you see there.
Yeah, I looked at that today, and I think what's causing the decrease is David Priest was a probation officer 2. He recently left in September. We did not replace him from an outside posting, so we moved some employees around. A current worker for us took his position. We moved another position into the grant position. So his whole entire package was about $72,000. So if we didn't replace him from outside, that's where the biggest part of that's coming from.
And then the other question I had related to adult probation was that the jail diversion grant last year, or in January this year, I'm sorry, Scott Fulton came to us and requested that we appropriate $62,391. And this request for 2015, it's down to $58,300, so it's like a $4,000 difference. need not there, going to be there, or you don't project the need to be there for next year?
Well, I guess the figure I have closest to that 54,300 is for programming, which is for STAIRS, which is a program offered at Lab, and then Thinking for Change, which is a program offered through Behavioral Healthcare Partners, and that money is used to pay for programming. So I'm not sure if in his budget he projected that we were going to have more defendants going through those programs. If we have less defendants, then it's going to be less money. We had a attendance problem this year with one of the programs, and that's caused us to not pay out as much to those agencies, so that could be it.
Do you see some success stories coming from LAP and using BHP?
Oh, sure. I mean, we partner with them. They, like I said, they run the STAIRS program, the Thinking for Change programs, cognitive behavior program that tries to basically change the way the defendant thinks. It targets, criminogenic risk factors, which an example would be antisocial attitudes, beliefs, values, personality, peer associations, things like that. All the research says if we can target those factors, we have a chance of reducing recidivism, which would mean to commit any crime. So we do see success out of those programs, and we're glad that they work together with us.
Plus, we have, the court in the last few years has assumed a lot of responsibilities that ordinarily we would not have had to assume. Judge Stansberry has taken over the lift docket after Judge Branstwell left from me, and then it passed to Judge Stansberry. And then we also have the OBI specialized court docket. These are both specialized dockets that have been certified by the Ohio Supreme Court. It's a trend that not all courts are doing this because it involves a lot of extra work on the part of judges and staff and volunteers. And we think each of them have been successful, although, to be perfectly honest, we would have to probably wait 5 years or longer to do recidivism studies to see if actually these programs are effective. The specialized docket, I see, Mr. Chairman, you have that on your question sheet here. That is primarily funded, and historically, it was totally funded by the state. The state came to us and said, we like the way you do things here. Would you be interested in having an OVI specialized docket court? And we said, sure, we'll do that. So they paid 100% of one of our probation officers' salary for a couple of years. And what's it down to now? They pay.
Right now, they're going to pay. It's through another funding source. It was through the Department of Public Safety. Now it's through the Ohio Department of Mental Health and Recovery Services, and they pay 65% of her salary and fringe benefits, where the other grant paid for some other things. So we didn't have an overlap of grants, we only took 9 months of salary, and it was 65% of that. Whereas if we didn't have another grant, we could have asked for 12 months of salary and fringe benefits at 65%. So it was a little bit of a reduced rate. Yes, but it's a new grant for Samantha Thompson.
How long has that been? Have you done the OBI specialized docket?
I think it's been 3 years for the OBI specialized docket, although we were certified last year. We did it prior to being certified because there was a long drawn-out process before the Supreme Court would certify it. The only thing that's changed is we now have a certificate on the wall. The lift docket, which Judge Stansberry administered, which was started by Judge Branstwell, has been around for one year longer. So the lift docket, they deal with largely mental health folks and also drug addicted people, a lot of dual diagnostic people in those programs. My OVI specialized docket deals primarily with multiple OVI offenders, people that have had as many as 5 and 6, 7 in their lifetime. So if I could just kind of pat him on the back, the probation department, it's a crown jewel, it really is, and the city should be proud of it, and the county too. The county, I'm sure all of you know, also funds a significant part of the court's probation department. His predecessor, Scott Fulton, who now works for the county, did a great job in securing these funds for us. Kevin's doing a remarkable job in keeping those funds. It's a real bargain. Be happy to share with you if any of you ever want to come up and see what we do. We're there, generally speaking, 8 to 4:30. Come on up. Jury trials, Judge Stansberry does his on Thursday. I do on Monday. All those are open to the public. In fact, everything we do is open to the public. If you ever want to see what goes on up there, stop by. You don't need to announce yourself in advance. And I do want to thank council too for, I've been here I think since 1991. It's a long time ago, 24 years, 23 years. And this council has always supported the operation of Lincoln County Municipal Court, and hopefully continue to do so. We think you get a pretty good bargain.
The last question I just had was, being the IT guy that I am, can you talk about the computerization, court computerization?
Sure. The court computerization fund is it was about 20 years ago, the General Assembly passed a law recognizing the need for courts to do away with the big docket books and all of the other antiques and move into the 20th century and now into the 21st century. So what we have is the state allows us to assess court costs. This is something that council is not, you're not giving us money out of the general fund for this. Mm-hmm. We assess court costs. The court gets, I'm embarrassed to say I don't remember how much. And then the clerk, we determine how much the clerk gets. And Marcia, what do we go up to, $1.25?
Is it 80/20? Or is it 60?
What's the dollar amount?
Yeah, that's
$1.25?
$10.
What's $10? Mm-hmm. Okay, and you get 80 and we get 20. So every case that's filed, court costs are assessed in that manner. And then we use it to, we have one of our employees is a tech guy, and we use it to upgrade computers, software, all the things that makes the court run in the 21st century.
I guess it looks like in that fund and all other budgets, $296,000. So there's a lot of, it just builds up over time. Is that what's happening there?
It does unless it's spent.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Any other questions from the committee? Or Mr. Martin.
I see in adult probation that professional services and services general increased significantly. That usually means that we're hiring out. What is, I mean, it's over 100% increase on both of those.
Well, let's see, the professional services, the $29,362, that's Steve Harrington, who's a contract hire. And then Toria Lovell, last year, Scott brought her on as a contract hire. She's a support for the secretarial staff. I don't know if you all remember, but back in Mr. Baines, when he was a mayor, we were part of that layoff where we lost our third secretary. And we've never recovered from that. We have a small office, but each one of those ladies serve a specific function to our office, and we've been void of the third for quite some time. So last year, Scott brought on a contract hire, which is, from my understanding, a lot better route to go for money as opposed to a part-time person or even a full-time person. So that explains that. The other line item, sir, what was that?
Services general.
Can you give me the total?
4,390.
Okay, we were, this pays for, it looks like I have a note, GD program, and we also recently purchased radios, and we went in conjunction with the bailiffs. there was a purchase of 4 radios. We used 2. There's a service fee for that, which we're going to have to pay that every month. There's also, since Samantha Thompson's original grant went away from the Department of Public Safety, the funds from that have been taken except for the 65% of salary and fringe benefits. So incentive cards, which I believe I spoke about incentive cards at the last Finance Committee meeting, we had to add those under this line item so we can continue to purchase those for the ODI Specialized Docket Court. They're very important for defendants to have some kind of tangible item to receive for them to perform well. So that's why that spiked up.
And then across the board in all the court, judicial, everywhere, supplies have just increased exponentially, and then in particular law enforcement supplies under probation. None of the other departments have that big of an uptick.
There again, we're going to equate that to the loss of our ODI court grant, the original one. We were allowed to purchase drug test supplies, things like that out of there. Looking back at past budgets that Scott Fulton had developed, I could see in those budgets where he was as high as $11,000 for that particular line item. When Samantha's grant came in, he reduced it, I believe, by half. So our thought process is we're going to have to up that to where it used to be if we want to stay where we were with purchasing of drug tests and things like that.
Scram units.
Yeah, scram units, which would be in that category, but we also pay for those as well. Electronic monitoring devices that regulate people's consumption of alcohol. There's monthly fees for that, which we pay out of indigent driver. We also pay out of grants, but for the specific spike in that particular line item, it's pretty much drug testing supplies, and we test a lot of folks. A lot of tests are being used.
Okay. Then across the board, throughout like the clerk's office and things, supplies over 25% increase across the board, just for office supplies.
I have no explanation for that.
Mark, did you have remit envelopes or something? I thought you had some remit envelopes before.
I'm sorry, I was,
Like an office supplies.
there was a 25% increase?
No. I'm just saying it was about $3,000 for remit envelopes.
Yes, we did send them out because it has been beneficial to the return on our payments. This year, our collections are about $45,000 higher that we paid to the city than we did last year.
Okay. Yeah, yours was about a $3,000 difference, exactly.
Very good,
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the committee or the audience? Well, thank you so much for your coming tonight to talk to us, and appreciate that.
Well, we appreciate your time. You did mention something about the law library earlier, and I want to emphasize that that's not just a law library for lawyers. That it is open to the public, and it's required by statute that we do what we do there. They changed the configuration of it a few years ago, and now I think the county commissioners appoint 1 or 2 of the board members. I appoint 1. I think we appointed someone in Doug Sasson's office to be our representative on the, and it has resulted in savings for the city because of what Mr. Sasson talked about earlier. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Well, I think the committee's ready now for Mr. Mayor and Mr. Auditor. If you guys want to come forward and have some opening remarks on the budget, we welcome your comments.
If you'd like me to give opening remarks on the budget?
Yes, sir.
Sure, be happy to. First, I want to step out and thank all the departments, including judicial, as they walk out here. There are some unfunded mandates, when you get into courts and when you get into different segments of government that become very challenging at times. We run somewhat of a decentralized government here that which you have to, with these main departments, that we have open dialogue with them and talk to them. Sometimes you'll have grants to cover costs and sometimes you won't. So that dynamic can change from year to year. The budget this year started with the auditor's department, which has done a great job, and actually all the departments have. We worked the last 3 years to try to educate them financially a little bit more so that they understand when there's challenges. As I kind of said, the job's a whole lot easier for everyone in this city when we have extra dollars. It's just deciding on how to spend it. When you have the other inverse of that, it's quite challenging and makes this a whole different project for everyone, clear down to each employee in the department, trying to do as much with less, whether it's worn out equipment, etc. We have had, in the last just few years, cuts of north of $2 million per year in revenue through local government fund cuts and at the same time through the elimination of the state tax. The state tax alone averaged over 5 years about $843,000 a year. At the same time, over that period, we have no less duties to do in this city. And quite frankly, we have rising expenses, just as everyone sitting in this room has had. Whether it's when you fill up at the gas pump, or you can imagine the amount of fuel, or whether we get a vehicle repaired, or no matter what it is, everything costs quite a bit more and has really exponentially gone up probably in the last year or two. With that, we had a lot of challenges and a lot of late hours, and we surely offer, it wasn't lack of effort to try to get this to you. Probably a day or two earlier, that was our intentions. But I will thank Lori from the Auditor's Department. We did have about a 14-hour day and another 12-hour day towards the end there, trying to get those out 10 o'clock at night and working hard. As I kind of say, there's a lot of little things tick and tie at the end. We surely don't want to give you a budget that has errors or omissions on it. But as you look at the number of line items on there, there's a lot. And when you are trying to trim back to match declining revenues, that takes a good open dialogue with those departments. They're the ones that should make those decisions of where that should be. And so we take it line by line. As everyone knows, we have, and I'll kind of cover a few things here since we have some newer people on council. We have a budget for the city, but we do divide it into 3 categories as you see by the 3 colors here. The general fund budget obviously starts with the number 100 and supports all the departments that are listed in that budget. That is the most challenging one. That's where the cuts have come. That's money that can be used for anything, but obviously because it's so lean, it needs to address the departments that are in it. We will look at the grants budget next, which covers both Department of Development and adult probation that has grants. A little more clean and clear cut, and that's why we divided it to kind of take that confusion out. You've got the grant dollars you have, and you administer those accordingly, and there's a lot of contingencies upon those, depending on how the year pans out. And as you saw some disappropriations a little bit ago, because things change, that funds may not have been spent in 14, but we spent 15. We can't recognize as revenue in 14. And then finally, the all other is all of those funds that kind of have probably some kind of requirement to them, whether it's water funds. We can't use water revenue to pay for police and fire or any other general fund services. Same way, license plate permissive tax, fees, and gasoline excise tax, we can't use that for anything but street development and improvement infrastructure of the streets. Those are required by legislation. Not only does our internal auditors department oversee that, but also the external auditors that come in every year and spend all told weeks and weeks with us, make sure that that gets done in that direction, spent where it needs to be spent. So that all other is contingent upon what projects are going on for that year and road widening, etc. So it can kind of roller coaster a little bit, just depending on what's out there. So then we're left with what we're discussing now, the piece of legislation for the general fund. We had probably the most challenging year we've ever had, at least since I've been here, but I'll tend to throw that out and really know throw that out and say across the state we see where everyone's having challenges financially at municipal government levels. With the cuts I mentioned earlier, it's been, to be honest, very, very tough at the same time having less employees. Employees take up a lot of your resources financially, but again, there's certain things you can't do when you get so lean in employees. All our employees are working very hard. Some of them are working multiple duties, much more than what they did 10 years ago if they were with us at that time. We have presented a balanced budget to this body here, which basically means we are projecting revenues based on projected expenses. Keywords projected, keywords is budget. It's not an exact roadmap, hence we always have leftover money at the end of the year and can help roll that into the final year. So without a doubt, we know it's a tight budget, extremely, and we know we have to run very lean in 2015 still. And that's our day-to-day job through myself and through the directors and the department heads. They understand it and they get it. Probably the middle of November, I shut off all spending, and we do that in several fashions. And each department, every expenditure has to contact my department, my office, me, and to get approval for that, whether it's a $10,000 item needed or a $10 item was the other day. And we look at that to help curtail. But even with that being said, this government is 24/7. It can't come to a standstill. So there's still very high expenses on a daily basis, even when you trim back and operate lean. We have leases. We have a lot of commitments that continue on. So we looked at open purchase orders, et cetera, closed some of those. It was a multifaceted approach, and there's a lot of parts and pieces to try to get creative. We have a balanced budget that includes a carryover, that the carryover is used to help satisfy. As you look through that budget stabilization, $300,000 was used into that. It is a rainy day fund, but it is raining. And at the same time, you'll see legislation in there to slide the capital improvement split from 85-15 to 90-10. And let me explain that a little deeper. Over the years, we've looked in recent history, that's probably been changed, that formula 7 times. It probably was most notable 86-14. At one time, it went to 90-10, and then it went back to 85-15. 1% is a fair amount of money in a city that runs like we do with our budget. It's surely important to know that before we do capital improvements, we need to be able to function every day. It's important to operate every day. Now, there are some things we do within this capital improvement funds that are not surely optional. I agree with that at all, completely. So, we look at that. But there are large expenditures that we want to be sure we can operate. Most private sector companies probably wouldn't allocate a percentage to capital improvements. We're not private sector. I get that completely, 100%. But we really look at that and be very discretionary throughout the year as those capital improvement funds get spent. The other piece is we are self-insured since 2005, or I should say partially. We have a stop loss of $100,000. So when claims are submitted for an incident, whatever that might be, through the health insurance, we pay those internally out of our insurance fund up to $100,000. Anything beyond that is paid by an insurance company, a wraparound policy, it's called, a partnership. That was brought in 2005 and was a huge win-win for this city in many ways. It couldn't be any better, to be honest with you. You control your claims you're paying up to the $100,000 is really based on your own experience within the city. With that, early beginnings, it's been in force 9 going on 10 years now. Really very, very good track record in many ways. The HR department has pushed out potential savings to health insurance. One way is through free medications that you might encourage the employees to get off costly medications, maybe it's for acid reflux, some very common things today, and get on to a lesser priced medication. To them would be free, but it's a big savings on the insurance side. So those are ways we've done that. Going back 5 years, our average in that insurance fund has increased, even with raising the stop loss from $75,000 to $100,000. It's our fiduciary responsibility to manage that fund and look at it every year and not make sure that it's not overfunded. Where does the money come from that? It comes from at pay period time, we deduct from the employees, and the city also pays in. Our present allocation for most employees is about 88-12. So the city pays 88% of a premium, the employee pays 12%. In a normal insurance company, you could raise your premiums and acquire more money. Well, we are the insurance company up to $100,000. So when we raise premiums, that means that 88% we pay more for, and it has an adverse effect on the budget. On the other side of that, looking into that fund, it is heavily funded at this time, and we are using that to help remedy the budget shortfall also on the capital improvements. Some members of this body enacted legislation a couple years back that said if there was ever premium holidays, no payment for a period for insurance, then any savings to the city would go into capital improvements. So understand, you don't have that obligation of that liability to make that payment. It isn't more revenue, it's less expenses. So what we're going to do, we propose to balance, and there is no plan A, B, and C, to be blunt with you. This is the only way to balance, is to take the 85-15, slide it to 90-10, so your general fund goes from 85% to 90%, that makes that balance. The capital improvements goes from 15% to 10%, but with premium holidays that are justified for next year, that makes up that difference. So capital improvements is, I think, within about $5,000. It's almost right there. So I could probably go on and on and talk finance, but I don't think any questions on those particular issues. Just knowing the semantics of how it works and what it does. I would be remiss not to say that we worry about the future, and we look into future years and what directions it's headed in many ways. But we're not so sure. To be honest and blunt, the only way you can do savings at this time with this budget is to lay off employees. And you will look, there are very small departments that you couldn't lay off at all, so you're going to have to look at your larger departments, and without a doubt that includes police and fire. You need to look at that. So everything is in the pot to help balance this budget. Balancing is a challenge. It's something I wish Washington had to do because it makes you work hard and say no to a lot of things, but it is a good projection for spending for the future years. Again, we'll run very tight as we move into future years. We believe at this time we can balance the budget, offer the same services to the city, and run lean and have a balanced budget.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yep.
Mr. Chair. Mr. Bowe.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I had a quick question. Regarding the premium holidays, that's an administrative function, correct?
Yes, the administrative function is to oversee that fund to be sure it's not too fat. Correct.
Yeah. I guess that being said, jumping ahead on that capital improvement split, I guess if we're doing the 3 premium holidays this year, I can see that, but why do we need to make it permanent later on? Why can't we maybe look at that every year? Is that a possibility?
Sure, absolutely. Because obviously the premium holidays aren't going to be every year necessarily. We will look at it every year, and that's fine. 3, to put it into dollars and cents, 3 premium holidays saves the city $384,000. That's what health insurance costs. So it costs more than that, but that's the savings of 3 holidays on the city side.
I guess if I could, Mr. Chairman, I guess I'd make a comment. I'm okay with that this year. I guess I'd like to maybe look at it every year before we make that permanent split,
And that's fine with us.
I don't serve on the Capital Improvements Committee, but I guess it's kind of correlated with what we're talking about. So.
Yeah, I think both these are correlated. With the projected, again, you're projecting expenses to that insurance fund, but the balance in there will still be north of $2 million, about $2.4 million probably at the end of the day, which is, by actuarial numbers, plenty healthy for the employees we have. When we overfund, we do have to look at that. We're using too many citizens' dollars to pay for health insurance. We're using too many employees' dollars, and it's grown from an average of about $2.3 million over 4 years up to $2.7 million. So,
Mr. Marvin.
Yeah, on that same note, I guess, just philosophy-wise, last year when we used budget stabilization, we said at the end of the year, if we did not utilize all the funds, we'd put it back into budget stabilization. Tonight you said that no, we're not going to do that because that's going to mean that we're going to have to take more out this year. So you've got that going on, plus last year you came to this council and said, look, our roads are deteriorating, we need to focus more on roads, we want to try to increase taxes in order to do that. And the whole reason why those premium holidays were going towards capital improvements, it gave us the opportunity to throw more money at roads. So now we're saying, well, we're going to balance the budget though with that, and we're going to do a little eggshell thing here, and we're just going to use those premium holidays as our regular capital improvements and take money out of capital improvements. I guess I'm a little lost as far as our prioritization with our streets being the way they were and are, but yet we're taking money away from capital improvements.
Yeah, but with the premium holidays, the level of capital improvement dollars will remain the same, which means the funding for the streets would remain the same. Which means without...
We said we don't have enough to fund. So, the whole premise, when Mr. Rhodes was on City Council with us, and, some of these folks were on there, was those premium holidays were to focus on additional money for paving. And that was the whole purpose for that. And now we're saying that, well, we're just going to, we might move that to paving, but we're going to reduce the paving that our regular general fund put towards that.
We're not reducing dollars to paving.
You're not reducing it, but if we did it the way that it was legislated, we would have an additional $384,000 to put towards paving.
It's legislated capital improvements, not just paving. I understand the discussion intent, and I don't know that anybody would anticipate financial conditions even 4 or 5 years ago to where we are today. The economy has turned many ways. No one could have ever projected a loss of $2 billion a year in local government funds and the state tax elimination. So with that, you have to be dynamic and make changes.
Okay, you had no problem reducing police and fire salaries, but you have you're basically saying that we could go ahead and do that with money that was set aside for paving.
The police and fire salaries is very incremental. Is what you're comparing 2014 to 15?
Correct.
Yeah. It's the minimum to hire one of them, police or fire, is at least $75,000, and you don't have that kind of a spread there. So it's very challenging. We don't necessarily implement on personnel head. We reach out and talk to the departments on their effectiveness and see what kind of job they're doing in the city. Once again, if we had the extra $2 million, I don't think we'd all be here even now tonight. Pretty simple. Slam dunk in many ways. So this has had to be a creative balance and a creative fix, and there aren't options other short of layoffs. So if we had extra money to pay, we'd be happy to do it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Other members of the committee have questions. Mr. Guthrie.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mayor, and I've talked a little bit with Steve about this, the workers' comp, we this year received, I think, a rebate in the general fund of $201,000 and about $50,000 in the other funds. And it's my understanding that that's going to, in essence, go into the year-end balance. And there's been numerous news reports where BWC is saying that we're going to have a rate reduction next year, too, of fairly substantial. And yet, when I look at, about 80% or more of these workers' comp lines all have increases. Is there a reason that we didn't take into account the projected reduction in premiums for next year?
Well, number one, we have to get official approval that you're going to have that. Generally, the reductions in the last year or two has been from favorable investment experience by workers' comp, state of Ohio. So there is no guarantee on those until we get a declaration, or I hate to say even the check in the mail, as tough as that is. Our position and the total agreement from the safety forces is you hire someone on anticipated revenue is very challenging. And do you want to hire someone and get them in for a year and then have to lay them right back off is probably not good employee management. So with that being said, we've got to look at, if interest rates start going the other direction, and there's change just depends. I mean, again, I've got to see that in writing before we're going to put it on the budget.
Mr. Johnson,
One other thing is Bureau of Workers' Compensation assigns us a factor or a rate, and it's based on salaries. So if salaries go up, then the workers' comp appropriation would go up as well. I don't think that we've been notified of any kind of decrease yet. We are a ratings pool, which has somewhat controlled our workers' cost contribution expense. My office doesn't handle workers' comp, so I just said all I know about it. We need to talk to Director Busker for any more finite information.
Well, they've increased across the board over 5%, but salaries are only increasing at about a little over 1%.
I don't remember what the factor was that we used.
So, well, then that means that the rates went up.
Well, they assign us a rate a year in advance, so I don't remember what it was last year, but we basically use whatever rate they gave us times the salaries that we pay.
Mr. Guthrie?
Steve, are we using the 2014 rate? Because what, and I've read several articles about this, and you know, of course, maybe none of them are true, but basically what it was saying was that, you know, we got rebates this year, we had a rebate last year, and that next year they're actually adjusting rates, and the municipal rates are going to drop like 13.5%. But we have received no notification to that effect?
No.
Because, see, what I'm thinking, Mayor, is if we can, you know, I understand the argument that if we earmark that for salaries, then, you know, we put those people in a difficult position. But why couldn't we, for instance, we know that we have a need in both police and fire for equipment. I mean, why couldn't we earmark that rebate or that refund for 2014 for equipment and the reduced rates, the dollars that we receive in reduced rates for 2015 for equipment? I mean, we do have significant safety equipment needs, right?
And we understand that, and if by chance fire overtime comes in at $50,000 over, where will we get the money? Or if police overtime comes in at $100,000 over. Knock on wood, we heard a lot of sirens a while ago, a potential fire down on Morris Street, and then it was no problem. But knock on wood, you have a big problem. You know, that's where overtime, we've taken police and fire overtime and put them down to minimum numbers to balance this budget. There's a lot of parts and pieces, and while we're comfortable with that, any what-if situation can make that change, and we certainly aren't going to ask the police and fire to stay in their respective locations and not go out and help the citizens. So there is that wild card of that. The only place left would be budget stabilization if we have nothing, because we have nothing unappropriated. So any found monies throughout the year, we analyze them all the time and look at them. I mean, really, that's my job in administration, to constantly oversee that money and see where we understand the aging equipment. We understand part of that, we believe, at the end of the day, equipment just has to be aged a little more than it used to be. You could turn it over quicker 20 years ago when you had money. So, you know, it's not a unforeseen thing, but if it gets legislated, and then we turn around and run short on money in daily operations like overtime for safety, we're going to have a problem.
So then what you're saying is that the $201,000 rebate this year and the reduced rates during 2015, you in essence want to put that money into a cushion?
Well, the 2014 was used to balance the budget. Anything that we get in 2015 would come into what's called unappropriated monies, but it has to go to respective departments. Understand that's not at all general fund money. And in fact, if you look at the number of water department employees, et cetera, it goes in many directions. So that isn't necessarily a dollar amount that's just going to be able to be used in that direction. So what I'm saying, it presents a cushion, and if that unappropriated grows to something that we feel comfortable about, but quite honestly, I'm worried about 2016. I would like to build a larger carryover for 2016. I'd love to have an unappropriated and not use it. And then, you know, do it a year from now when we're talking, we have a balanced budget again, being able to offer the services and potentially not be able to go into budget stabilization as much. I mean, it's really, anytime you're into your savings account, net 200,000, net 300 plus 1 minus 1, you're saying you don't have enough money in the regular stuff. So any money we would get in there would help keep that fund steady. So that's our analogy of the financial side of that.
Questions from the committee?
I just had, if we could look at under Department 111 of the ordinance 1440, when we talk about the premium holiday, this is the $386,920 that will come from that, and what we'll do. This is the transfer out account.
Let me find it.
Okay, it's page 7. If you're looking at the yellow sheet. At the top. Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. And then on the previous page, just to continue on with these transfer out accounts, the operating transfer capital improvements, it says $509,913. So that is taken into account of the 90-10 split. Is that what that amount? That is okay. I just want to make a lot of questions I have are educational.
No, it's not total. It's not including, correct, Lori?
No, that is taken in.
That is taken. Okay.
That is taken. Okay. So I saw last year it was 813,164, and then so the 509.
But we've got the 386 on top of it, though.
Yeah.
On top of that dollar.
Okay.
Because that's coming in a different direction.
Okay.
If you understand that. That's the operating transfer capital through the income tax.
Gotcha. And then staying in with these transfer out accounts, I was just curious, so it seems as though the operating transfer TIF, see, like last year when we adopted the budget, it was 0, and then this year we're going to appropriate 281.
Talk about that, or I can talk. We had, let me just build a basis for that real quick, if I don't mind. We kind of had the colliding of a few things beyond our control. As I talked about, the local government fund reduction, the estate tax elimination, that, it takes a little time to catch up with that. We understand very little collections in 14, nothing, I think, in 14. But you have a little carryover. I mean, it funds you and it kind of does it. We've kind of run out there. Another thing is property taxes were under collected to somewhere in about $275,000. Beyond, we don't do that estimate. The other thing is the Longaberger TIF. And while, it's challenging, they owe property taxes and are delinquent on that, and there is debt associated with that we believe we have an obligation of $281,000 next year to make up, unless they get caught up on their payments. They have started to make some payments, and sizable, and if that would continue, that also could be additional monies next year. But again, I'm not going to count on it or count it in. So that's as a $281,000 bailout, $275,000 under collection, and in property taxes, it starts adding up. So that's what that line item is for. Any additional? That's pretty.
I think you pretty much summed it up.
Any questions from the committee? Questions from the audience? Okay. I just wanted to go down through. We talked about the VWC money, and I know that we used at least $50,000 of that to help pay for attorney fees for the collective bargaining agreements last year. That was around November or October timeframe. In this budget for the Human Resources Department, we're putting in $20,000 for professional services. Would that be for any expected attorney fees?
Absolutely. There's ongoing grievances, as union members have a right to. There's ongoing grievances now that we anticipate some potential expenditures there. We believe it was the belief of this council to regulate that a little more, as they did last year, and approve it at $20,000, and then be able to bump that up as needed. So the original number in there was a potential $50,000. So, and we've trimmed that back. So. Years ago, to be honest, it was well over $100,000, or even $200,000 in some years. Some amazingly amounts of money. But we try to, knock on wood, keep things a little more peaceful around here, and hopefully that minimizes the use of that fund. Last year was a higher year too with union negotiations, as you know. it. So we will not have that 14. Contract negotiations in 15, sorry.
I don't want to take all the time, Mr. Marvin.
Just the estates, I know last year we said we had some wrapping up to do with the state taxes. I think we had 10,000 in there last year. We still have 1,000 in there this year. Is there still some of those lingering, or what's kind of going on there?
Can you answer that, Steve, maybe?
The county suggested that we appropriate something for state tax. So we just threw out $1,000. They felt that would be realistic.
I assume if there's something held up in probate court or some type of litigation, I assume they're kind of aware of that. We take their numbers, but at least it's something there, so.
There are estates probably still pending from 2013 that could be settled. So we'll know what happens.
Mr. Chairman, Steve, can you just give us an idea just for a baseline? That estate revenue, it's gone from, what was the high, say 4 or 5 years ago? Where are we?
Well, I think the high that I remember seeing was probably about 14 years ago. It was around 1.7 million. But what we've looked at is a 7-year average, and it was right around $800,000 as an average over a 7-year period. So that's the number I always use.
And so do I understand, you're talking then that between the local government fund and the estate tax, it's only $2 million? Because I thought it was like 2.5 or 2.6.
Well, again, the estate tax is going to vary. I mean, we've had as little as 250,000 collection in a year.
But it's gone.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you want to go back to averaging per year, is that number you go with, Steve?
Yeah.
2 million? I mean, it's...
Yeah, and you know, a lot of times we talk about loss of revenue, and it's not only the local government funds and estate tax, but interest, because interest earnings come into the general fund and the restricted. And I've told this story several times. I think it was the year 2000, the city earned over $1 million in interest. This year, we're going to be lucky to earn around 50,000.
Yeah, when I came in as treasurer of the city, we obviously had investments at 3.5% and 4%. We're lucky to get 0.5% even on millions of dollars because they're not loaning the money. So there were many departments that could there was operating dollars when you, as Steve says, you invest 20 million and get $1 million back. Now you invest 20 million, you get 50,000. So it's a big chunk too, Dent.
So that is always in the discussion of lost revenue.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just say, and I know I'm like a broken record on this, but those cuts, the state has in some ways held counties harmless because here we've lost. All right, let's agree on a number of 2 million. Well, the county got $2,020,000 new dollars from the casino revenue. We didn't get a dime. Only host cities, every county, but only host cities got a dime from the casino revenue. So I mean, it's like they have literally left us out in the cold. And now I actually was trying to read an email because Barb Jones is working herself, her fingers to the bone trying to figure out what happened in the Senate, the House Bill 5. And she doesn't know all the details yet, but it doesn't look like there's anything really that's happened that's good for Newark, Ohio. Now, a couple big city mayors have said they made some improvements. But when you read the fine print in those news stories, it's things that were done specifically for those big cities. So,
they have big employers that speak loud and are listened to.
And so, I hate to use the term, but we're sort of picking, what with the chickens out here.
Well, I think the way this came out of the legislature, probably a year from now, we'll be discussing that. The impact that it'll have for the following year.
January 2016.
Yeah.
And just because it is a financial issue, but this city has been on top of that. Barb Jones really as treasurer goes clear back, and I really well, they kind of empowered her to stay on top of this, Barb, and she's done an outstanding job. Kudos to her being on the OML Tax Committee and chairing that. And so, you know, we don't know exactly where the dynamic's headed. The sad thing many citizens don't understand about raising costs, and maybe they don't always understand the complications as we're discussing tonight, because it is quite complex, government finance. But if that egg takes even more money from us, I think likely there'll be a referendum filed from the citizenry, and they're looking at some big cities that are welcome to do that. The hard thing with taxes is they're very complicated, and we're a town of 48,000, whatever it would cost us, a town of twice our size isn't necessarily going to cost them twice as much. It depends on your tax makeup and your businesses and your corporation limits. It's very complex for people to understand that compared to property taxes or other things out there. So, but I think when the dirt hits the road and people understand it, you know, it's been going on for a couple of years. It got passed out of the House because it'd been in there more than 2 years. It's gone to the Senate, back to the House. It's, you know, so you see, I've talked lately, we've done all we can do. And maybe it's best it gets passed, and then if there's going to be a referendum, it happens. And then you put it to sleep and move on. So,
Mr. Marmon, you had a question? Comment?
Yeah, the first one is more of just wondering why. So why was income tax moved into the general fund?
That is an accounting requirement. I come before this committee from time to time talking about GASB statements that requires us to do something differently. Income tax had been set up here as a special revenue fund. It's not a special revenue fund, and the auditors have told us to be compliant with, I think it's, don't quote me on this, I think it was GASB Statement 38, it's one of the statements, that the income tax should be part of the general fund. So it was mentioned to us a couple years ago, and we're just not doing it.
Okay. And then two other just quick line items. The $130,000 for the bed tax, was that the amount that our final payment for that portion that we had to pay? There's nothing in there under that line item this year.
The bed tax has become a special revenue fund.
It's done the opposite.
Yeah, it should not be in the general fund.
Okay.
Initially it was, and it's been moved to special revenue fund.
All right, and then my final question is, what does custodial need with road salt?
Sidewalks, I believe, Mr. Rhodes, is that correct?
I mean, we've never had it under there before, so that's why.
Well, part of what we're trying to do is to clean up many of these budgets to be more reflective of how we spend that money.
Okay.
Part of this software has a history piece to it that years down the road it can help us in some projections. So we have cleaned it up. I think the auditors department have said, both Lori and Steve, that it might be the cleanest it's ever been in the history of Newark. So it is important. So that answers your question.
I had a question regarding the service department. The $788,670 for the other intergovernment billings, what does all that go towards?
You've got the Lincoln County Health Department service agreement there.
Is that what the majority of all that goes towards?
That's all of that.
That's all that for the health department.
When we came in as administration, there was a piece in there that had a stepped premium for that. And it was at about 100,000 more than that, even a little more than that, and it was projected to go over $1 million. And through good negotiations, and surely give the service director kudos for that, we've got that. I wanted a level premium to the health department so that we have better accurate projections. And I think in the probably 5-year span, we save about $1 million total. So that's all for health department work.
And then when under that same department, can you explain what the House Bill 300 fund, what is that about?
Jeremy, that was done under the Bain administration. And the House Bill 300, just for a little background or history, what that allowed cities to do was borrow money for capital improvements within buildings. And the dollars that were used were to do energy upgrades. And that's why we have a company called Honeywell that came in, I don't know, mid-year last year to show what the savings actually are off those improvements. And you're supposed to be able to pay for the debt out of the savings that you received from the improvements.
Oh, okay. So if they come in and say, look at City Hall, then they evaluate what energy savings.
The House Bill 300 was something that again, Tim Weiser and Bruce Bain did. We're still paying on that on a yearly basis for a few more years.
So you borrowed the money to go to new lights that have the little T5 bulbs to put in better HVAC thermostats. We've always agreed that it works a whole lot better at times, but it was a promised commitment, as Mr. Rhodes is saying, and we're still paying on it.
You know, and if we would want to move forward and do any additional energy upgrades, it would now be called House Bill 295. And we haven't brought that forward to you yet.
Mr. Guthrie said, did it produce any energy savings?
It did, Mark, and I've got that on a PDF that I can send to you if you'd like. I've got the PowerPoint Honeywell did, and I'd be happy to send that to you. As a matter of fact, all members of council tomorrow.
And the other thing, I remember the conversations, it's not just a savings. What it did is they projected what our increases were going to be, and we have not had those types of increases because we went this way. So it's not going to show just a pure savings dollar for dollar, but it did reduce our increases that we knew were going to happen.
Mark, it's a pretty powerful PowerPoint. I'll get it out to all members of council.
And Doug, that's a good statement. Sometimes you don't only save, but you don't go up.
Right.
And if you look at our energy costs for streetlights and for the water department, and FYI, streetlights, there's over $500,000 a year we pay just for electricity for streetlights. So there's some pretty hefty costs out there, and Roger could talk to you about the water department, how those have gone up. So in this case, we've not absorbed those raises as much. So.
Well, I wanted to stick with the utility bills for a minute. Is there a difference between, talk about the street lights, when you go down the street, you know, there's sort of those street lights that got kind of like an orange yellow to them, and then there's those street lights that got like a bright white to them. When do we go to those?
Do you have a difference between sodium lights and a difference between LED lights? Some of the systems the city owns, we're slowly switching over to LED lights. Some of the systems,
that's the brighter white one.
Some of the systems the city do not own, and that we just rent, that we pay a monthly fee on per light. Those are owned by AEP. So the big dialogue is does the city take ownership and the maintenance of all of those and install LEDs? And in order to do that, there's an X amount of cost to that. That might fit under House Bill 295, but really at this point, the cost of LED lights are dropping a little bit, so I don't think it's smart for us to bite that off at this point. But I will give you just a reference point. The traffic lights used to cost us about $84 a month per light, and changing them to LED lights, our cost is about $29 per month.
Oh, wow.
Plus, they last longer, so we have less service trips, and there's a savings there too. And Jeremy, that's something that we've talked to a couple different companies about, and including local companies who make the balusters that would fit that. And it's just, it's a big project, a big undertaking, and it would be a couple $1 million to switch them all over and to do that. And just wasn't there. In the traffic department, you will notice that we raised supplies by $10,000 this year over the past, and the reason for that is to implement more LED lighting in the systems that we do, and we are doing that as we speak, but at a little bit slower pace.
Again, more upfront costs, but long-term savings. Hudson Avenue is one of those. If you've been down the north end of Hudson, there are whiter lights now than those poles. So we pay meter, those are metered, those architectural poles, the black poles. So it provides a brighter neighborhood. I think well welcome, but it's savings too. You know, the real goal one day would be to have all the lights on the expressway. People don't realize we maintain the expressway. We cut all the grass. When the lights burn out, those street lights burn out down the middle of the median, we replace those. So if they were LED, you'd save money and you wouldn't have to go out and replace them as much, which is labor. And we could focus on the more necessary things. We'll continue to monitor that. As the service director said, when costs get down at the right place and we can do analysis, it'll make some sense, we'll probably come and talk.
And at that point, we'll come in and do a PowerPoint presentation and show you what the investment is and show you what the savings would be and who would install those.
Well, even a part of crime prevention, having that brighter nighttime light.
A lot of parts of the modern, not to get off subject too much, but the Hall of Fame right here puts out a system that there's sensors in every one of the street lights in certain municipalities, big ones that have high income taxes, but they come in the morning and look at a panel and can tell you which lights failed overnight. They can also reduce those lights down about 50%. And they're still as bright as the sodium lights, but only using even half that energy savings that even Dave was talking about, which is a third to start with. So that's the future, and we'll look at how we can implement that, and we're slowly starting to do that, but there's a high cost on the front side.
The other question I have regarding utility bills is, I know that Director Motter and I have sat in, you look at the fuel costs that are being budgeted for 2015. Is there any more serious consideration of an alternative fuel such as CNG or anything of that nature, or that's still a preliminary?
Well, we did do through the water department. We bought our first electric vehicle.
Okay.
And what was that? I think this month. Maybe? Or not our first, but another electric vehicle this month. But through the service department, we've not implemented any of that yet. Those are things that we're looking at, but not implemented.
Mark, you want to mention a couple words too about CNG? I mean, we've had some discussions.
We've had a little preliminary discussion on it, but I think on the priorities, to be honest with you, just took over. But it is something that is coming about. We do have one station here on West Church Street, just to the west of the YMCA, where you can fill up if you have a vehicle that uses compressed natural gas. There are, I know the area over in Columbus, waste management trucks I believe are using them. The Dakota buses are using compressed natural gas. So it is something that is up and coming. It does require, obviously, conversion kits. If you have to take gasoline engines over to compressed natural gas, there's costs there. So we have done some initial investigation on this, but we still have a ways to go before we implement anything like that.
Yes, the conversion kits are quite expensive. Again, there's that upfront cost, maybe $8,000 or $10,000, even more. And there is limitations on older vehicles, how many of them can be converted, and we have a fair amount of older vehicles. So it is surely something we're going to look very serious about when you buy new vehicles.
Right.
And look at that, because that's your best savings in many ways. This is a fast flow station over here on Church Street. There's also a slow flow, but if you set up a fast flow station with several pumps, it's well over $1 million setup. And there are no incentives, tax incentives for that from the webinar we went online with here about a year and a half ago. So, it's things we keep looking at. The best way is to also get couple big corporations on board, and we've had some preliminary talks with them. So.
Question about Mr. Marvin.
Had one other thing, and I don't know, Lori, just might want to check this. Medicaid under the auditor's department, it's the only department that had a higher than, most of the other departments are less than 1% increase.
Yeah,
but it's like
what department?
in yours.
Okay.
It's like almost a 4%.
Yeah, I think that's me. Because I was just under,
Lori, we can't hear. Can you
oh,
come?
I'm sorry, sure.
Come on up here and join me, Lori.
Okay, sure, you have to do. There are certain employees, if you are employed before a certain date, then you didn't have to pay Medicare. So now I am paying Medicare, but years before I was not paying Medicare. So that's probably why. Because it hit my paycheck too, so I noticed that.
I had a question about Babe Ruth Park, actually. Is the services general, last year it was $17,100, and then this year is $1,700.
What we did there, Jeremy, is we sat down and we discussed the bed tax legislation with the auditor, the law director, the mayor, and myself, and we decided because of all the out-of-town tournaments that are coming in that would be eligible to use $15,000 in bed tax dollars rather than general fund dollars. Thus, we're creating a relief to the general fund.
That's something you can't do at the pool. The pool isn't going to create out-of-town stays, and we want our premises to kind of have out-of-town. We had about 350 ball games down there this past summer. So, and those, because of the hotel and the DoubleTree, those ed tax dollars projected for 15 are growing. So.
And that goes to the YMCA? That
Yes.
17, okay. And is it the same for the Hollander pool, the $25,500?
The $25,000 comes from the general fund. That is not a bed tax item, but that does go to the YMCA, yes.
Sure. Mr.
Just want to compliment everybody for their efforts. I'll tell you, I'll make a motion to pass this on to full council.
I'll second it.
There's a motion to adopt, let me get my paperwork, hold on. Let me find my sheet. Sorry. Okay, there's a motion to adopt 1440 by Mr. Bug. Second, Mrs. Floyd. The only comment I wanted to make is, I know last Friday when we had talked, Lori, you were going to send out the employee breakdown. Oh, you got that?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, yeah.
She just got it.
Okay.
I did. I had it earlier and I had to take my mother to the doctor, so.
We can give you copies after council.
Okay, that would be appreciated. Let's see, we have a motion and a second. Any further questions or comments? I know it's getting late, people want to get going. Seeing none, all those in favor of moving this on to full council signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Motion carries 4-1. And we do have ordinance 1441, which is the grant fund. Make an appropriation of the expenditure of the city of Newark during the year ending December 31st, 2015, the grant fund. I did ask the director of auditors up at but just because there's some new people, and I thought it might be good to have a little breakdown of to what it is that we're going to be doing in 2015. So I appreciate that.
You're going to just take it down one at a time and just give a brief description of what's going on with each of the grants, and
thank you.
Hopefully that'll be helpful for you. Now, not all of these are under my department. For example, the probation grant, would not fall under my department, and a few others. So I'm just going to hit on the ones that fall under the Department of Development. So the first one's going to be under Fund 232, which is the transit fund. Obviously, we don't have a transit program here. We haven't for 2 years. However, the federal FTA transit program is still in the process of bringing closure to this for the city of Newark. So there are a few dollars in there to take care of that for this year. Primarily, it's cash on hand dollars that are in there. We received from the state of Ohio. We will probably be forwarding those dollars either to Licking County Transit or possibly back to the state or the FTA. Next item under our budget, if you go down to fund number 234, which is the brownfield cleanup, we have 3 grants that are active in that program right now. The first one is number 145, the action plan, which we refer to as the brownfield action plan. This is primarily tied to the Union Street corridor, and it's also the legislation we just presented this evening to perhaps take on the demo of 110, 114 Union Street. That is where those grant funds are going towards. Number 146 under the brownfield is the hazardous substance assessment. This is a $200,000 U.S. EPA assessment grant fund that we've had a lot of success with here throughout the city. It basically offered the property owners to do assessments on their properties to see if there's any sort of contamination or asbestos that would be associated with their property, which become very important at a time when they were to sell their property. With full disclosure real estate laws now, that's something that's very important, and these grant assessment funds do not have to be paid back, so it was actually a real service to some of these people who chose to participate. Who were some of those participants here? A few examples. Good Guys Garage downtown took part in this. The Arcade, Tom Cotton's building, took part in this. Mid-State Warehouses on West Main Street took part in this. The old Hartzler School site was part of this as well. So a lot of good was done here directly in our community. That's pretty much, it's getting close to being completed. There's not a lot of dollars left. So again, it was about a $200,000 grant program. We got about $35,000 left that we think will expense out in the coming year. And the last item in the brownfield is listed as number 148 on your apartments. That's the North 21st Street project. More specifically, that's address 209 to 217 South 21st Street. There was that piece of property is directly to the south of Packaging Corporation of America. A fantastic private entity here in our community. They have a lot of good paying jobs. They would dearly love to expand and retain their presence here in the city of Newark. To do that, they need more space because they're bound by the railroad tracks on the north side, and obviously 21st Street to the east. We have been working for a number of years. We think we're getting close to a solution to remediate the contamination that's on that property at 209, 217 South 21st. If we can get some cleanup solution, that would allow PCA to then come in, take over that property, and do the expansion that they want to do. And it's huge. Some of these, just the machines are $10 million. So it's very, very critical. So we're hoping to move that forward in 2015. The next item would be fund number 236. That's our overall community development block grant fund. And probably the best way I could summarize this is just tell you, number one, what is the primary objective of CDBG? And this is a quote: the primary objective of CDBG is to develop viable urban communities. Well, what are the objections to do that? The objections are to provide decent housing in a suitable living environment, and third, expanded economic opportunities, all that benefit low to moderate income persons in our community. We have a number of things that we do, and all those items are actually contained in our one-year plan budget, which we actually had a public hearing meeting here back in October. We had a 30-day review on it, and when we get federal allocation from HUD, we will do a formal presentation of that budget to HUD at that time. But briefly, we do small business assistance loans with this money. We do downtown revitalization projects for businesses in this area. We do emergency minor home repairs for residents that qualify in that low to moderate income level. Things like, for example, we're getting calls where people's furnaces are out. We had a person called recently where their water line burst, and they don't have the money to fix it. In the summertime, it might be air conditioning with people who are severe asthmatics, and we'll help out with that. So there's a lot of different things, a lot of flexibility. That's an example of what we do there. Then we get involved with our departments here in the city. We work with Brian Moorhead on street improvement projects. Every time he goes to pave a road, the federal government requires him to do these curb ramps that you see at all those intersection points. We get involved with that. We get involved with Service Director Rhodes on his parks improvements. And also we're going to be heavily involved in streetscaping for the downtown sewer separation project. We got about $100,000 reserved to help out in that, again, under Mr. Rhodes. Obviously, fair housing is a requirement that we have to supply a fair housing program since we do receive the CDBG block grant funds from HUD. And finally, we're going to fund about 8 different local nonprofits that put in applications for assistance. Briefly, there's St. Vincent de Paul Behavioral Healthcare Partners, Salvation Army, Licking County Coalition for Care, Woodlands, Licking County Coalition for Housing, The Works, and South Newark Civic Association put in an application as well. So we do a wide variety of things within the CDBG budget. Going into the revolving loan funds, back up, let's go to 237, the Community Development Home Fund. That is the CHIP 14 grant that we were successful in securing just this fall. And that'll go to do 6 projects, which are whole house renovations, again for low to moderate income owner-occupied homes. So we'll be beginning that implementation next year. The next item is the fund number 260, the Community Development Revolving Loan Fund. This can be used for a variety of CDBG projects or CDB eligible projects, and it also can help supplement some of these programs I just mentioned on our one-year plan. And if anyone has questions of going through, let me know.
Oh, Mr. Guthrie?
Yes. Mark, where does the, I think it's 60,000 for the CIC, where is it in here?
That's in our one-year plan. And that's going to fall under the, back up here, Mark. Under Fund 236. And that's going to be the all other accounts. 498,700. Account number 5,200.
And that is still 60,000?
Yes, it
And
is.
when is that? I believe that was a 3-year commitment. When is that commitment completed?
Well, it was implemented for 20, let's see, we had a partial carryover. 12 and 13 and 14.
So are we,
yes.
does that coincide with our year or the federal year? That commitment?
Well, the city of Newark, as you know, is on a calendar fiscal year. And so that's how we budget, but we get our allocations on HUD's fiscal year. So a lot of times we don't realize our funding from HUD, for example, last year it didn't hit till July of last year is when we actually received our release of funds.
So then is the CIC, the $60,000 commitment for 3 years, does that end at the end of this year or at the end of next year? Or at the end of
this year, meaning this year's budget, 2015 budget?
Yeah.
I think I'll go through 15, I think.
Yeah, go through 20.
I think it went 13, 14, 15.
Yep.
I see, okay.
Thank you.
If you were at the lead grant,
Yeah, I think I just finished up fund number 260. So the next will be Fund 262. That's the Home Revolving Loan Fund. Recently, we've used these funds to help fund Habitat for Humanity homes in our community. Obviously, the outcomes for using that is we're taking, in most cases, vacant property, which is unproductive property, getting someone who qualifies a new home for a family who didn't have one before in many cases, and then that property obviously is now an income-producing property that pays property taxes. And it's also contributing to the neighborhood. Now you have a vacant ground that has a family living there, and they're all giving back to their community. Number 264, the Lead Grant Revolving Fund. We will use this in conjunction with the CHIP 14 program because most of these older houses have a lead program, have a lead problem as well, and so we'll be using those funds to supplement the 2014 CHIP grant. Below that, we got fund number 265, the Housing Development Action Grant, and primarily that's probably tied in with the 191 Hudson Avenue house. We just have a few dollars there, the $1,500 for maintenance and expenses and some taxes. We're trying to work on a solution to really get that house demolished, and because it is a blighted property, and we'd like to try to get that problem taken care of. The next item is the fund number 293. It's listed as the AG Demo Grant. These dollars can be used to help with other city demolitions. After that, we have the 294, the COPS grant as it's titled. This was a 3-year grant, a federal grant that helped to pay police wages and benefits. So that's what that'll be going towards. And then fund number 297, the fire safety grant. That is a state EMS grant that helps purchase supplies, medical supplies for the fire department. Yes.
Mark, reference the COPS grant. What are our plans as far as applying for future COPS grants, future, I think there's a federal grant to hire firefighters. What's our plan on those future applications?
Well, I know Barbara Gilks has done a good job of constantly keeping up with those grants and making applications for anything that can help, support the funding for our police and fire departments.
Do we apply for those whenever we have the opportunity to do so?
Yes.
Might add Bill, do you want to speak to that?
Well, I would just say, Mr. Guthrie, but Barbara has done an excellent job, and those are revolving when one grant application period ends. Typically, another one kicks in, and Barbara's been really, really diligent. I would say just it's her MO to apply again. I'm unaware that she's never not applied for those grants.
And the restrictions we do look at quite in detail. Many of them, once the grant dries up, you have to still fund those numbers, which will be 100% on the general fund. We have to look at that dynamic also.
Thank you very much. So you were talking about the EMS?
Correct. The EMS fell under fund number 297, the fire safety grant, and that again was to help purchase medical supplies. And finally was fund number 298, which is listed as the ODNR, and that's a parks grant that Director Royce people can use there. And I think one of the main things there is actually help with the fishing derby. It's helping us to restock the ponds.
Thank you for doing that. I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Bug.
I just wanted to thank you, Mark, for your efforts here, getting the department cleaned up and back on track. With that, I'd make a motion to pass this on to full council.
Second.
Motion, Mr. Bug. Second, Ms. Floyd. To move ordinance 1441 on the full council. Any further questions or comments?
I just want to thank him for his presentation, because I think it's very helpful for us to get an overview of what's going on, and you forget sometimes what goes into what fund, so thank you very much.
Sure. Thank you.
I just wanted to clarify on the 262, the RLF for CHIP. You're recycling those funds for Habitat for Humanity, basically? Is that what the 100K would be for?
That's one of the projects we've been doing. We can also do some additional CHIP programs in place.
Because you have a new CHIP grant, right? So.
Right.
Okay, hang on a second. Okay, this $1,500 for the HODAG, is that going to be, that you said was taxes or maintenance? And I was just wondering is it possible for a HODAG, for that grant money, can you sell that property? I know it costs $35K, we got about 16 in it, we're going to lose. Can you sell that and then someone else can do whatever they want with it? We're not under the restrictions for HODAG? Put that, Carol.
The answer is yes.
Okay.
As soon as the $35,000 is paid back, then
So if you could find a rich investor that didn't care about $35K, we'd be off the hook.
we would be.
Okay. And then, one more, do you mind?
Go ahead. We would also still have to pay back the $16,000 though that's then charged against that account.
For the 311 Transit, I had 4 questions I wrote down. DOD satisfied all the FTA issues?
The last email I received said that we had gone through an audit of the department, and they said they were submitting, this is the outside auditing firm that the FTA uses. They sent me an email that said that we had addressed 99.9% of the $612,000 that they were auditing, and that they were forwarding a favorable report onto the FTA Region 5 in Chicago.
Okay, so that was the rest of my questions. You received confirmation that it's closed, not yet, but you will. And
Correct.
The monitoring issues were resolved?
That is their report, that it was 99.9%.
So the 40K you think will go back to either the county or back to FTA?
Yeah, that's going to be FTA's call on that, Rhonda. I really don't know how they'll make that determination.
Okay. And this was something we talked about a long time ago, that 21st Street property under the 148 for Brownfield. There were taxes on that because Guthrie and I had talked about that before. Who's going to pay the taxes and the liens on that?
Any back taxes and
Right,
so forth?
there was a significant amount that was there, like PCA wasn't going to.
Ultimately, what's going to happen is going to have to be a developer involved in that project that's going to assume all the risk. But the city brings to the table is a $500,000 grant that can be used for the remediation. We can't do anything over and above that. We don't have that capability to take on that risk. And so that's what we've been working on for a number of years, is trying to ultimately find a developer who would take this project on and can work in conjunction with PCA and their management, as well as Heartland Bank, who has the mortgage on the property as well. So we're getting close. We just had a meeting a week ago with a potential developer, with Tom Watson, the manager of PCA here in Newark, and also with Scott McComb, president of Heartland Bank. We just took place up on the 4th floor this past week. Okay, so we're making progress.
Thank you very much.
I think that'll really clean up that South 21st Street, especially once the railroad fixes up their mess and get that project.
So the biggest thing it'll do is allow to get that traffic, that truck traffic from coming in and out of the loading dock areas off of 21st Street. The plans on the expansion are to bring those trucks in on Jewett and bring it around to the back of the building.
We have a motion, we have a second. All those in favor of moving 1441 on to full council, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. 5-0. Thank you very much for doing that work. Okay. And 1442 is the all other fund. Ordinance number 1442 to make appropriations for the expenditures of the city of Newark, Ohio during the year ending December 31st, 2015, the all other fund. Mr. Mayor.
Sure. Well, we can go through that. We have a couple specialists, I might call them, around here from different departments that some of these would be applicable. If you go down through it and want to look at it, I can kind of describe a few things. Fund numbers, if you notice, start with something other than 100, as I discussed before, just kind of a little education there. We have a little bit of cemetery dollars in there. That's not the whole department. Those are restricted funds. A cemetery open and closed fund, if you pay in advance for burial services, obviously we can't use those elsewhere in the city, so we have to put those in a protected fund that will be used for that. So hence it gets regulated funds that need to go in that area. The same way with Veterans Memorial sidewalk funds and things like that. When we solicit for dollars or have legislation that covers dollars, then it's guided to where it can go. It's going to go into one of these. Hotel motel is the same way. Legislation for collecting the 3% hotel motel tax. EMS dollars. The judicial funds, the pensions go in here as we go through this. So if there's anything in particular, we talk about the license plate permissive tax, we talk about the gasoline excise tax. Of course, we put some debt service in here because we have an obligation there. Water department, any kind of water funds are going to go in that, water sewer. JED Z, which are collected by our tax department, income tax department. They started with JED Z1, which is where Prologis is. I believe they're completing their last piece of that property, and then we maxed out. It's probably one of the more successful JED Zs in the state. JED Z2 now on the south side of Route 40. You'll pass the sign there that says actually Prologis on Route 70. They're starting to work on that. And then the JED is the JRS Job Ready site the county's talked about that Shirley is just outside of the task force. So they contract with our income tax department to collect those, in which they also adopted our income tax code in its entirety with the same rate, but all the basic guidelines that go with that. So
how long have those been in place?
Oh, the JED Z, I mean, it was prior to me. It was probably within the 4 years. Probably about 2007 or 8, maybe. We can get you. Does that sound about right, guys?
I think it started under the Bain.
Yeah, under Bain.
It was under the Bain administration with Mr. Fowler.
Okay, so just a little bit prior to that then. And then the JED actually started with when I was treasurer, so 2010-2011 range. And if you recall, the JED right now, I even believe to this day, doesn't have a building setting on it. So you do collect some early dollars off that from construction of the road, etc. But then you kind of get a lull until you can get actual some production facilities in there. A little bit of a timing issue, of course, having Prologis as a foundation for the JED Z1 was a nice timing, and it did bring a lot of credibility to that taxing district out there. So the JRS is economic times when the timing is a little rougher, so.
And then I was curious, can you, just to go back, going back to the hotel motel fund, the $130,000 for the bed tax disbursements, what do we plan to do with that?
We actually have two amounts there. We're finishing up purchase of Dunn Edwards Park that was approved by prior administration through prior council. We're making our last $50,000 payment on that. That's the difference between the 130 and the 180. 130 also has legislation attached to it. In the future, it has leaned off the general fund, hence I hate to say there's another $25,000 that we don't have in the general fund that we had last year. It kind of declined off there. That was the lowest amount. And what it has been used for by legislation is required for the ice arena and for the NASA fields, which both do provide bed nights on activities. We had ice arena, for instance, I was invited and went. We had 10 teams in from around the country as far as the West Coast that plays a tournament every year here, and they stay at the hotels and they have banquet facilities. I mean, I spoke at one of their luncheons. They really bring some dollars in, and they think our ice facility is some of the best they've been on. I get some really good kudos on that. So they operate that well. That is legislation to guide that is expiring, and then we give them, of course, through Dunn Edwards Park. We've given some to the Settlers. Recently, we've given some to Newark High School and also to Newark Catholic for the basketball tournaments that they bring into town for overnight stays with that. So the basic premise, we have a committee and that both Carol and Doug sat on as leaders. And then we look at not only the legislation we need to satisfy, but then any other requests from outside entities. But they premise that it needs to likely fill a bed night, maybe guaranteed, maybe not, but you surely wouldn't go down a road that it guaranteed it wouldn't fill a bed night. There's not always a promise to that, so that you kind of grow that fund and keep her continuing. We have 5 hotels in our city, and that was newer legislation back in 2010, I think, or 11, that it kind of got put in place. We used to get a piece of the county collections, which was 3%, and we got 1%. Then we broke out. We can't take that anymore since we have our own, and that's the 3%. So it's for, I'm sorry, I don't want to leave out the Midland Theater, the Works, I mean, things like that, but yeah, thank you.
We're going to let you leave it out.
You guys are going, whoa. Not just sports, I mean, it's arts, it's, there's many things we look at, but again, and certainly you can push things our way. I mean, it's something we look at, and we'd like it to almost lead to more bed nights, because that grows that fund. You're so reinvesting in your own, that little business, but that could really have some potential in the future. As we try to make Newark a destination and work on that, a big part of it is, why would you spend a night here? And because there's enough to do over 2 days, and that's something we work hard with, and I hear that from the outside. We don't always look at it from that way from the inside, but people come into the Works. I was up in Delaware meeting City Hall people up there on software, and they came down and spent a night with their kids and went to the water park out at Cherry Valley and went to the Works the next day. So, and they loved it. So those are kind of things we look for. And if we have a requirement to build, or have the private sector build another hotel, that's a good thing, and that just, those dollars can supplement the city even more.
Thank you, Mayor. This is kind of a combined question with the state highway fund, the license plate progressive tax, and the capital improvements that is listed in here. Is there a plan as to when we would, I know that like for this year, we got out late bids for paving, and then, so actual paving for 2014 will happen until the spring. But for this coming year, will there be a timeline as to when these funds, we can actually...
Yeah, when Brian's office, and Brian, you can chime in at any time you want, but we work very close with this. When we apply for state capital improvement funds, which we have for 7 years now, it's been 27th year, and we try to get, $1 million, it just depends, I guess that always varies. We look at what, Brian puts the feelers out and can kind of, what can we think we can get, don't ask for too much, might get turned down, one of those balancing acts. That's never declared until after July 1 because of the state's fiscal year. It is always after July 1. We can line up so many things, but we cannot legally award a bid till after that. So with that being said, as happened in this year, what you want to do is to put together a very attractive paving package for a vendor. There aren't many people that pave out there anymore. You can count it on less than the fingers on one hand. So if you sit down and put a little small bid out for $300,000 capital improvements, you're going to get a better bang for your buck if you can put out $1 million. So it's advantageous to wait until that award is given in July, and then by then you're putting it together. So you almost work on that a year ahead, is what the timing frame of that is. I mean, because then if paving companies have an opening, as they did 2 years ago, they can come in and do some extra paving, but likely they're already booked and done. When they start back in March, April, maybe April, they're already done clear through the fall. The challenge we had this year was the state did an amazing amount. More miles of pavement across this state, and I witnessed it out driving. It was unbelievable. Hundreds of miles, if not more, maybe thousands, I don't know, more than they've ever done. So obviously the couple paving companies are going to say, like Coco saying, that's what we're going to do. And that's a nice bid for them. So there's never a guarantee. If they come in and we do a bid and they say they're going to get to it in the summer and it gets pushed back because of weather or demand, and they say, we're going to do it next year, but we don't have a choice. It is what it is. I mean, we have to deal with that. This year, we're able to build in with that $10,000 savings in that bidding process by agreeing to allow it to go to the next year, understanding we didn't think any of them would be able to get it done this year. So we will look at those each year. You know, people have to understand that while Newark has financial issues and challenges, so does the state, so does the federal government. So thus we have reductions in grants. We have all kinds. It's not as simple as when we need money, go out and ask for more. There's less. The CDBG funds that Mark Motter talked about were above $1 million to us, not just a few years ago. Now they're down around the $700,000 to $730,000 range. So you also have those challenges across the community, but you do what you can do. But it's not unique to Newark nearly. It's across the whole state. One thing we tried to do is not have excuse my French, but an oh crap moment. And that's really projecting ahead. I think sometimes governments do that. And whether it's because of their lack of their understanding of the finances, or whether politics get in and play games, and I just shoot from the hip and tell the way it is. You know, we're not playing games. And what we don't want, I like to go in with a budget that we think we can get done through the year and not get into a third or fourth quarter and have to go crap and lay off a bunch of people. That's not a nice thing. You know, when I hear one or two people being laid off somewhere, okay, but when I hear Marion, a third of the police force was laid off a couple years ago. I mean, that's just, how do you get into those situations? That's a lot. I mean, that's amazing. And, you know, so with that being said, you know, it's very challenging in a lot of these cities. We hear these stories too often. Again, I told the story of Mansfield in 2010 when fiscal emergency. $10 million in the reverse in the debt. So, you know, if you have to constantly try to raise more funds, like raising license plate permissive tax, but the citizens get no more for that. It's paying off debt, money you've already spent. So those are the things we work hard on to try to avoid. But it's been very challenging, but anyway, so.
A lot of this is educational, so under 422, Fund 422 debt service, can you tell me what you have? The first one is, I'm looking at page 20. The first one says finance. And then you got Evans Boulevard and recreation facilities. Can you just sort of break down what is each of these?
Finance accounts for the fees that the county charges us on TIFs. We have two TIFs that are funded through TIF payments that come through the real estate tax settlement. And that's just how we charge up the county fees. It's kind of like what you just appropriated earlier this evening. So that's what that is. And then the rest of the things in 422 are just principal and interest payments on various debts.
And Evans Boulevard's over by the school.
It's the road itself.
The road itself.
Fire administration.
And then recreational facilities.
That's the ice arena.
That's ice arena. And then safety facility. Is that the?
Well, there's a couple of safety facilities. The first one, the more expensive one, is the police station and the West Main Street Fire Station. And there was an overrunning cost on the police station, so there's a second bond issue on it.
So I'm sorry, Steve. So that's underneath recreational facilities.
If you overrun the 65,000,
Yeah, the overrun is the 65,000. That's police and fire facilities.
and maybe, let me interject one thing. Normally, when, again, interest rates are low, so we don't make that $1 million on interest, but also borrowing rates are very low, historic lows, so that's an advantage. You can take up to a limit, as we've done. We usually start out with a bond anticipation note, which is a one-year note. So you're going to see a $6.6+ billion number there. That's because technically that's due in a year. And that has to show on the books and reflect that. Now, in the past, we roll those, and Steve and I talk, and he talks with bond counsel, and we do a lot of negotiations, or talk with, I shouldn't say negotiations, talk with that. And if we believe interest rates are going to stay low, it's more favorable to roll it. Anytime that a lender gives you money, the shorter the term, the more advantageous the rate, because they can predict it. When you go out 20 years, they don't know what's going to happen in 10 or 15 years, so they're going to put a higher rate in. So with that, these bond anticipation notes at one-year increments are very advantageous for us now and most any time, but especially now. It depends on the economic climate. So we'll roll that again, but it has to show in the books if it's truly due within that year, the principal and the interest. On the other ones, you're seeing a lot of interest payments, I think, on everything else, pretty much?
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
Mr. Guthrie?
Steve, is the ice arena folks, are they making their agreed payments?
Of interest payment, yes.
No principal?
No.
Wasn't principal part of the agreement?
Let me chime into that. What they are doing is capital improvements on the ice arena that we've required them to do, reinvest in the structure to improve it and keep it in good shape. And I look at it a few times a year, and it is in great shape. But we don't want them to drain it. So in lieu of that, we wanted them to feel comfortable with improvements. They look at the ice making equipment they've got in there could do a whole other sheet of ice like they have now, a duplicate, if they wanted to at their dollars.
I understand, Mayor, was principal part of the agreement?
I do not believe it was. The current agreement we have now is interest only.
Who's going to pay it off then, if all we're doing is paying interest on it?
Well, no, we're paying principal too. This is a bond.
The city's paying the principal.
Exactly. It's $10,000.
Could you fill us in on the agreement sometime? Just, if somebody can just provide us a detail.
Yeah, we have a copy of it.
Yeah, Mr. Rhodes can answer that too. He signs agreements, and the service director would have that. So we have to, as a city, you have to do things that entice people to come in and spend money in your city from outside the limits. So, what we don't do is give discounts on income tax, for instance, to companies that come into here, like most of our competing cities would do. If you see these income tax abatements, or there's all kinds of 20-year plans, and I've talked with mayors over in Columbus, and they kind of get tired of that after a while, because it's a war among the suburbs over there as to who gets what company, and at the end of the day, are you giving up everything? There's other incentives we try to do, a much less financial dynamic, to try to create some tourism in the city.
What we prefer to do is start all projects with short-term debt or a bond anticipation note and renew that until the project is done, when you know what the exact costs are. At that point, we sell bonds. Bonds are long-term debt with a locked-in rate of interest. And one of the things that occurred back in 2002 or 3, with the police and fire stations that were built in, we sold bonds to build the buildings. The police station cost more than was anticipated, so we had to issue a second bond on it. Normally, we would never sell bonds in advance. We would always start out with short-term debt. Short-term debt, as the mayor said, because of our bond rating, we had one last summer at 0.75% interest, and the $4 million water line replacement that we just placed last week was at 1.25%. And I've got short-term debt records that go back to, that I can easily get my hands on, that go back to 1965, and we were paying like 5 and 6% back then even. So these rates we're getting now, I think probably the lowest we've ever had.
Oh, Mr. Cross.
Did I understand you said that we're making our final payment on the ballpark? And when we...
There were five $50,000 payments.
And that is, so that's...
In this year, 2015. Usually made third quarter. I've all framed that anyway. Yeah, I think this council will look at that legislation and we might offer some suggestions on where we think that ought to head for the next year. That's something, maybe not a year from now or a little bit less, we can talk about it. And I think Steve will talk about, as much as I'll be honest, financial regulation is challenging sometimes because it doesn't allow efficiencies. Now, yes, if you have people in offices that you don't trust, I get it. But if you have people you trust, it straps our hands sometimes and we can't take advantage of some efficiencies. One example, at Mansfield, we have stories that they passed income tax increase for paving. Well, it was so tightly done just for paving that they didn't have any dollars to do the curb ramps, to do other ancillary things with that, so they couldn't spend that money. So they were too lean on operating and too fat on paving, and then the legislation kept that, the tight legislation, narrow legislation, maybe is the right word, kept them from using those funds. So.
I had two more questions. Under the Fund 669, Stormwater Utility, I was just curious about, I know that Mr. Loomis had shared with me the study, the Buckeye Quarter Stormwater Study, with those different priorities with the neighborhoods and things. I just wondered, what's the priorities for next year in that, or what will be occurring within that study for the stormwater lines?
Well, next year, the first portion of work to be implemented is storm sewer in West Church Street and through the 30th Street intersection with West Church Street. We've also got an intersection project going on in the same area, so we want to get the storm sewer done before we're building the intersection on top of that. So that'll actually start in springtime, and the construction will probably take place on that throughout the summertime. So that's the first portion of construction, and then the other item that we also want to do to work through that study is to there's some land that we would like to purchase for a retention area down off of Buckeye Avenue. So we're going to kind of try to work on that and use some of the funds that we've got available for that. So that's kind of the 2015 plan, and then we'll have to take it step by step from there.
I got residents yelling on Wells Avenue and Idlewild, so the more that plan moves along, the better. So,
I understand.
Thank you, sir. Any other comments or questions from the committee?
Make a motion.
Done.
I'll second.
Okay. Motion by Mr. Bove. Second, Mrs. Floyd. Any other comments, questions, audience? All those in favor of moving this on to full council, signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. That concludes Finance Committee. Next is Capital.
Call the Capital Improvement Committee to order. President is Mr. Ladd, Mr. Roletta, myself, and Mr. Johnson. We have one item. Consider ordinance number 1443, amendment section 890.13 of the codified ordinances of the city of Newark, providing for the allocation of income tax revenue. Mr. Rose.
You've heard the discussion all evening, and it's just changing the percentage from 85-15 to 90-10. There was some discussion by Mr. Bob whether we should make that a permanent change or not. Maybe a motion, if you want to change it so it isn't a permanent change, should be made on council floor. But which can be done.
You can pass it now and put the amendment on, or then change it in council.
Okay.
During council?
Yeah, you can, or you can do it at committee. It's really,
We can do that in council.
Okay.
Yeah. Right. Any questions from the committee?
Madam Chair, I want to make sure I understood what you said. The amendment that they're talking about for full council would be to...
Make it a one-year change.
Yeah.
Make it a one-year
Sunset.
change.
Okay.
It's sunset.
I agree with you.
Okay. Any questions? Other questions?
I personally won't support this at full council unless we do have the amendment that limits it to 1 year. If we have to extend it year to year, that's fine, but I would be opposed to making this a permanent change. So with that said, I'll make a motion to set it on full council.
Okay.
Okay.
Second by Mr. Funk. Any other questions?
I might just say, there's no intentions to make it go beyond it, but you also, if it was permanent, you have the right to undo that every year too, FYI. So, you know, add other legislation to the alternative could also change it, but timing would make sense. So.
God forbid, when this comes due, that we don't have a different administration.
Right.
So all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. We are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Alex.